Hey, it's Ed, and Adam asked a question about this, and I thought this would be timely. I'm also practicing this for my real job, and I thought this would be an effective way to go over it. Sizing a filter. People make stuff up perpetually when it comes to sizing a filter, and let's face it, the majority of filters that are in equipment are not sized properly. I often ask my audience, uh, target numbers for filter sizing. And the most common answer I get is 300 or 400 CFM per ton. Filters aren't really rated in CFM. They're rated in MERV, which is how small of a particulate they'll catch. Pressure drop, which is what we really are concerned with, as much as how much it cleans the air, but I digress. Where I'm going with this is velocity is something you should be concerned about. But when you ask the average person, the average heating and air conditioning person, they put their hands in their pockets and avoid eye contact when you bring up the discussion of what is an acceptable velocity for a filter. Because again, they'll say 400 CFM per ton. It's nuts. Math. We have to use math. And the math that's on your screen right there, and let me grab my highlighter. CFM is equal to area times velocity. The volume of air is equal to the area of our ducts in feet, right? Square feet, not inches. Times the velocity. Supply trunks. Keep it under 900 feet per minute. Return trunks. Keep it under 700 feet per minute. And then have enough surface area for your filter so that we have reasonable face velocity. Did you notice the way I dodged the question as to what the reasonable face velocity is? Because it's a moving target, right? That 300 rule of thumb, not a bad rule of thumb. But if I can have more surface area, that's never bad. Can I have less? Sure. If I have a powerful enough fan, and when we fill out the friction rate worksheet, we can assure ourselves whether we have enough oomph in our fan to overcome the pressure drop. Velocity is equal to CFM divided by area. If I have a 3-ton system and I'm running it at the magic 400 CFM per ton, I can mathematically determine how much area I need to maintain a acceptable face velocity. That's not how I do it. I look up the information from the filter manufacturer and determine what my pressure drop is at a specific CFM, or whatever the manufacturer publishes and forces me to manipulate their math to solve for if I have enough area or not. If you're not doing this, there's a solid chance you're not sizing and or selecting your filters correctly. And that's the reality of our industry. This is a screenshot out of Manual D. That right there, filter, grill, face velocity, 300 feet per minute, to my knowledge, is the only reference in that book, thanks Adam, for what the velocity is across a filter. It's not where we determine what our face velocity is. We do it on the friction rate worksheet, which is coming up next, I believe. Filters are rated using this ASHRAE 52.2 standard. This standard requires that for MERV, and you can go learn what that is. It's the minimum efficiency reporting value. It's how small of a piece of whatever is in the air it'll collect, but that's a topic for another day. Manufacturers of filters are required. The ANSI standard, the ASHRAE 52.2 standard, requires them to report the MERV rating and pressure drop at any one of these 7 velocities. And if you look at these numbers, they look weird because they're in meters per second. I'm not a metric kind of guy. I'm a, what is it, inch pound, right? God bless the USA stuff kind of measurement guy. But if you look at these numbers, if a manufacturer is allowed to publish velocities up here, then would we ever buy their filters? Probably not, because that 1-inch pleated filter would have a pressure drop greater than your fan power on high speed with a 3-ton drive. In other words, you could have, at velocities like this, you could have pressure drops of 0.4 and 0.5. I am not making this up. If this is new to you, you need to start looking it up. It's really that simple. Manufacturers, and I'm not going to say they're sleazy, but they're sleazy. What they do is they publish data at these very low velocities that we're very rarely, if ever, going to achieve, and it produces these numbers that we're familiar with. We see the 0.1s and the 0.08s, and oh, we want that filter. Unless you're putting in, and I'm going to exaggerate this, but 5 or 6 square foot of filter area, you're never going to achieve velocities that low. I will say that the filter grill manufacturers, they recommend some really big filter grills because they're trying to keep those numbers, and I'm not going to say it without doing the math, but if I was to guess, they're going to be below this 246 number. But don't believe me. Go look it up and do the math for yourself with the, oh, which one is it going to be? It's going to be my, I have it written down over here. My area is equal to my CFM divided by my velocity. And you can rewind and pause and use those formulas. All right. On the friction rate worksheet, this is the process to determine what size ultimately what size ductwork we need. It's a process where we start off, and I'm not going to teach manual D, but it's a process where we start off with how much pressure we have to begin with, and we deduct, easy for me to say, all of our component losses. One of those component losses is our filter. And this is, to my knowledge, the only place where manual D forces us, and yes, it forces us to do a good job of filter selection. If you're making up a number and putting it in there, congratulations. You're like about 80% of the other hacks that are out there that are just making stuff up and then sighing when their systems don't work the way they thought they would. Well, this is a big part of that issue. And if you do your due diligence, you don't have these issues. It's that simple. This particular filter manufacturer, someday when I become king, I'm going to make every filter manufacturer publish right on the filter what the pressure drop is at a given CFM. I don't possess that power, so the only thing I can do right now is give props to the filter manufacturers that are currently doing that, because that's pretty sweet right there. This is a reasonable pressure drop. And I'm going to say if I'm moving 1,000 CFM, oh, and that's what's on my friction rate worksheet, is a realistic number. And I know it's going to be this because of math, right? How cool is that? This is a chart that a friend of mine, Harvey Kaplan, shared with me. It's more than a dozen years ago, and if I was able to actually find the original, I wouldn't be surprised if it was closer to the year 2000, very early 2000s. If we look at the common size filters that we use, and my favorite one to point out is over here at a 16 by 25 by 1. It's 400 square inches in area, 2.777 area in square feet, and at 300 feet per minute, that's 833 CFM. And I know a whole bunch of you right now are going, oh man, I got that size filter in systems with 3 and 4 ton drives. Yes, you do. And you have either giant pressure drops that were never taken into account, especially if you're using a more restrictive filter like a pleated one. Pleated filters aren't bad, right? They have bigger pressure drops because there's not enough surface area. It's not the filter itself. Or you have a rock and boulder catcher, aka a cardboard frame fiberglass filter, and all the crap's just going right through it. We've all been in this house. People change your filter all the time. It never gets dirty. You run your fingers across the cups on the squirrel cage or the blower wheel, and it's dirty. It's because all the dirt is going through the filter. It isn't going around, so don't fall into that trap either. If we do proper filter selection, can we enjoy very low pressure drops across 4-inch filters? This is in my attic, and I have less than 1/10 of an inch of a degree pressure drop across and it's going to be somewhere in either under 800 CFM or over 800 CFM, depending on what the humidity level is and on that given day, because I have a cool system that works based off of that. Here's somebody whose jockeys were so tight, they put 2 filters in. If you laughed when you saw that, you're an idiot. Well, maybe you're not an idiot, but you're not as smart as you think you are. That's genius. If you want to keep your pressure drop incredibly low, more surface area, more better. That's the way this stuff works out. And that's all I got for you. Start paying attention when it comes to filter sizing and selection. It can have a bigger impact on your system's performance than you might have realized. So do a better job sizing your filters. And if you already are doing a good job, here's a proverbial fanny pack for you. Other than that, I'm done. Merry Christmas. And as always, if you guys have questions about stuff, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always happy to answer questions about this stuff. Take care.